What point are you raising on?
Speaker, would the Speaker up front take a question on HIV?
Honourable Member, would you let
You are wasting my time. Sit down, please.
You won't take the question.
I'll take you up anytime you wish, but you are wasting my time. Honorable Speaker, we corrected the wrongs. We took the bull by the horns, especially since 2009, the year in which you in the opposition claims the country started deteriorating under President Zuma. This is the year which South Africa turned the corner. Hence, we proudly have a good story to tell. Yes, we are regarded by the United Nations Programme on AIDS, UNAIDS, as a model country in the management of HIV and AIDS. We are running the biggest treatment program in the entire world, and you expect the president not to mention that as an achievement. Death is no longer everyday experience in South Africa from a disease that used to be responsible for 1,000 deaths per day, a disease that was responsible for 49% of maternal mortality and 35% of under 5 mortality. This is a disease that once caused business of funeral homes to be the most lucrative business in many parts of the country. It is a disease that dangerously lowered life expectancy in our country. South Africa turned the corner. Yes, it turned the corner in 2009. And you don't want the president to say that that is a good story to tell. This country will never be the same again due to the changes brought by the ANC. However, we are the first ones to agree, as is the nature of ANC, that we still have a long way to go in reducing the burden of disease in our country. In the same way as we did with HIV and AIDS, we shall do so with many other diseases. Prevention of diseases and promotion of health shall be the hallmark of our strategy. Honorable Speaker, we are happy to announce that we are ready to tackle the second biggest killer of women in our country after breast cancer. That is the cancer of the cervix of the womb. This is a terrible disease that affects 6,000 women per annum and kills 3,500 of them on an annual basis, and 80% of them are African women. More so women who are HIV positive are 5 times more likely to get this cancer. It is propagated by a virus called the human papillomavirus. Honorable Speaker, human papillomavirus is a vaccine. It is called the HPV vaccine. The World Health Organization advised that we vaccinate sexually naive girls. I'm happy to announce, Honorable Speaker, that we are ready to vaccinate young girls against this disease. From March this year, from next month, we shall vaccinate all the grade 4 learners in public schools. This will happen every subsequent years in our schools from now until in the future, as long as the ANC is in power in this country. They shall be vaccinated. Honorable Speaker, we will deal with the issue of unwanted and unplanned pregnancies. On the 27th of this month, that is next week, we will be launching the biggest family planning program South Africa has ever seen under the theme Dual Protection. We are launching this program in a clinic in Ukuruleni. Ordinarily, method of contraception used to be the pill injection every 3 months or the intrauterine device called a loop. This time, we are introducing a totally new tool which will be used together with condoms. It is called a subdermal implant. It is a very thin device, 4 centimeters long and the size of a lead pencil in diameter. We will implant this device subdermally, just means just under the skin of the upper arm, and protection against pregnancy will be guaranteed for 3 years. This device will be renewed every 3 years or taken out anytime a pregnancy is desired. This device costs 1,700 rand if you go to a private doctor to install it. But we shall give it free of charge to every woman in South Africa, regardless of their socio-economic status. It will be available in all public hospitals by the 27th of this month, and it will reach all public clinics by the middle of the year. Honorable Speaker, only ANC has a good story to tell because we know where this country is coming from and where it's going to. The human papilloma virus costs 1,000 rand a dose. We will vaccinate it for free among all our learners to protect them from this terrible disease. Because, Honorable Speaker, we do have a good story to tell. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Minister. I now invite the Honourable T.D. Harris to the podium.
Honourable Speaker, I hope the quality of today's debate is better than yesterday's when we heard nothing but stories from this side of the House. They do need to do better because they have some big gaps to fill from the President's speech last week. Now, in the middle of his history lesson, the Minister of Health told us that they never have to go to court to choose a president. But their president has to stay out of court to stay in the presidency. In his speech last week, the President tried to claim all of the credit for his predecessor's work over the past 20 years to cover up the fact that South Africa has slid backwards under his leadership. Many speakers yesterday continued this analysis of achievements since 1994. They glossed over the decline in the past 5 years.
Order, on the members, order.
And they benchmarked democratic South Africa against apartheid South Africa. Let me be clear on this. It is not a debatable point that we are better off today than we were under apartheid. I don't believe anyone in this House disagrees with that. But, Honourable Speaker, it is not a valid comparison. We can do better than benchmarking ourselves against a racist, illegitimate regime. Because what is really at stake in this debate is the record of President Zuma's ANC in government. And when you dig into that record, you can see why the President and the other ANC speakers try to hide behind the record of previous leaders. Because some awkward truths come to light when you compare the past 5 years to the years that came before. Since 2009, unemployment has increased from 30 to 34%. The number of discouraged job seekers has nearly doubled from 1.2 to 2.2 million. There are 5 times more service delivery protests every week. And average economic growth has declined from 4.2% under President Mbeki to 2.8% under President Zuma. And that is not to say that Honourable Pandor was correct yesterday when she giddily hailed the unparalleled achievements of the past 20 years. Over the whole 2 decades, economic growth remains stuck well below other emerging markets, and unemployment remains stuck stubbornly high.
Honourable Speaker.
Perhaps most shocking is the fact
Yes,
that
Honourable Member, there's a point of order. What point are you raising on?
No, it's not a point of order, Honourable Speaker. I wanted to know whether the member can take a question.
I'll take a question.
Do you pretend that the economic global crisis has not created shortages of jobs in the world, and South Africa is an island, and therefore there will be job growth and economic growth irrespective of the global crisis?
Don't make a statement.
What the Honourable Speaker or member is referring to, Honourable Speaker, is perhaps what Minister Davies told us yesterday when he gave us a long analysis that none of this is their fault, why we can blame all of it on the global financial crisis. I would like to hear one of the ANC speakers today explain the growth performance of emerging markets like Vietnam, like Peru, like Turkey. Today they are all growing above 4% in the same global economy from similar stages of
Order,
development.
members, order.
Our economy is growing below 2%. The only possible explanation, Honourable Member, is the lack of leadership on the economy. And you might think, Mr. Speaker, that given that it's an election year, the governing party might put forward a few more ideas to at least try to convince voters that they have a plan to create jobs. Yet every speech from this side of the House, including the President's, has been silent on a plan. Wait until after the elections if you want a plan, the President said. Well, fortunately, we've seen the ANC's plan in their election manifesto. Let's look at what it says about jobs. Create 6 million work opportunities by 2019. That's great. It's a good idea. The DA in government rolls out high-quality EPWP work opportunities in great numbers because they help to reduce poverty and they transfer skills. In fact, last year, the Department of Public Works nationally awarded the City of Cape Town prizes for their EPWP rollout in 2 of the 3 available categories for municipalities. And the DA in the Western Cape has delivered 100,000 more work opportunities, Honourable Cronin, than the target set for us in 2009. We also deliver more skills than any other province. Mr. Speaker, the DA believes in EPWP work opportunities, but they are no substitute for real jobs. It is scandalous that there are no other job-creating ideas in the ANC's manifesto, that the ANC's jobs plan begins and ends with work opportunities. In contrast, the DA's manifesto would lead to 8% growth in 10 years and help to create 6 million real jobs. But, Honourable Speaker, perhaps the ANC is lacking ideas because every time they make a promise on the economy, they fail to keep it. They get caught out telling stories, if you know what I mean. In their 2009 election manifesto, they promised to halve the level of poverty and unemployment by 2014. That's this year. But the number of unemployed South Africans instead has increased by 1.4 million since then. They promised in the manifesto to protect poor communities from the rising price of food. Instead, we've seen bread prices and meat prices rocket by 69% and 40% respectively. They promised to adjust BEE policies to benefit broader sections of our people. Instead, Minister Davies, when he changed the law last year, changed the definition of a new entrant to a share scheme from somebody with less than 20 million rand equity to someone with less than 50 million rand equity. If you have 45 million rand in BEE deals, you are still a new entrant under Minister Davies' BEE. It really is a dismal record on the economy, isn't it? The Zuma ANC comes up short against previous administrations. It comes up short against other emerging markets. It even comes up short against its own election promises. Now, Honourable Speaker, last night the Honourable Pandor began her speech by lamenting the DA's negativity. Well, Mr. Speaker, to paraphrase Churchill, there is much to be negative about. And most of it has emerged under President Zuma's ANC. But thankfully, the DA is not negative about our country. We believe our people have the potential to build a strong economy, to take on the world and win. South Africans are inspired by the way the DA has turned Cape Town into a city that delivers more free basic services to the poor than any other. The best run city in the country according to Municipal IQ. They are inspired by the way the DA has turned the Western Cape into a province of hope, with an unemployment rate 12 percentage points lower than the national average. But most of all, Honourable Speaker, South Africans have had enough of the ANC's stories. This year, they are going to make themselves heard at the ballot box. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Speaker, and I wish to invite the Honourable T. Botha.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable President, one cannot but agree with the President that South Africa of today is indeed a much better place than 20 years ago. However, the indisputable overall gains made during the first 2 decades of our democracy are being negated by underperformance in the spheres of local government and in the area of housing delivery. It is therefore encouraging that the President has specifically emphasized local government recovery as a priority for the immediate future. As municipalities are confronted with renewed service delivery challenges, they are also facing an acute shortage of critical skills such as engineering, project management, financial management, as well as monitoring and evaluation capacity. Furthermore, increased urbanization places additional pressure on old and decaying existing infrastructure, much of which needs extensive maintenance and replacement. The increasing housing backlog and the poor state of service delivery continue to cause tensions between the state institutions and civil society. Thus, the differentiated quality of service in different demographic areas of our society further creates schisms between the state and civil institutions. This is further exacerbated by the ever-widening gap in income levels of the different racial groups. The growing number of service delivery protests throughout the length and breadth of South Africa, without doubt, has cumulative effect of diminishing confidence in government. Honorable Speaker, public perception is that the ANC-run local governments are incompetent and inherently corrupt. Councillors are portrayed as self-serving entrepreneurs with provincial and national governments lacking the political will to intervene. The prevalence of under-expenditure due to lack of effective project management and implementation capacity is a critical shortcoming with major impact on housing and general service delivery. While some progressive policies may have made great strides towards improving the lives of South Africans, issues such as corruption, maladministration, nepotism are bound to overshadow any positives that may have been achieved by the government. These should now be clearly identified, isolated, and adjusted through appropriate legislative and regulatory amendments, followed by decisive action and implementation. Honorable Speaker, the pivotal point around which good governance stands is not just the maturity of state institutions, but rather their efficiency and effectiveness in delivering services to the public. This requires a professionally trained public service which operates free from political interference by party operatives. More often than not, the blurring of the lines between party structures and government results in maladministration and poor performance. It becomes difficult to identify the source of the failure, whether it is the politician who fails or the public servant who is not performing. This is more pronounced at the municipal level and in some parastatals, where the roles of the different functionaries, i.e. the executive mayor and the municipal manager, are not clearly defined. In the case of parastatals, for example, the SABC board, where the public protector has publicly stated that there is lack of clarity as to where the role of the board begins and ends and where the functions of the executives begin. Such a malady in an institution often leads to malfunctioning and poor performance of the institution. In short, the state is as good as the ability of its institutions to perform efficiently and effectively in delivering services to the delivering their mandates. However noble the intention of the political principles, once state institutions collapse, whether due to corruption and inefficiency or unprofessional behavior, it can only lead to only one result: the delegitimization of the government in power. Fruitless expenditure continues, disclaimers by the Auditor General, and the growing levels of corruption, as well as the inability of the departments and municipalities to spend their allocated budgets year after year, are symptoms of weakening state institutions. Without a decisive intervention by the government at the level of institutional arrangements and systemic re-engineering, this could lead to poor service delivery, which eventually leads to civil unrest. Honorable Speaker, among the corrective measures necessary to create good governance is appointment of staff based on requisite skills and not on the intensity of the political connections the individuals has or ranking within the political party. Secondly, there must be clear definition of roles between the executive arm of the municipality and the administration. This separation of roles must of necessity improve performance, as lines of communication and accountability should clearly be defined. Thank you.
I thank the honourable member. I now wish to invite the Honourable Oriani Ambrosini to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Through you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, you've known me for 20 years. and I'm sure you had a few occasions to curse my name. But I'm speaking to you today somehow as a changed man, not to oppose you, but to plead with you, to provide a voice on behalf of many people in my condition who do not have a voice. Cancer is the greatest pandemic this country is facing. And people are dying of bad policies and of bad laws which we can change. There are available cancer treatments which are not made available from a legal viewpoint, and I stand here as the expression of that problem. I was supposed to die many months ago, and I'm here because I had the courage of taking illegal treatments in Italy in the form of bicarbonate of sodium, and here in South Africa in the form of cannabis, marijuana, daca. Otherwise, I would be packed with morphine and I would not be able to speak to you, Mr. President. On November last year, the South African National Cannabis Working Group presented to the Minister of Welfare these 4 volumes, which represents the proposed new policy of your government, Mr. President. What this paperwork stands for is the proposition that there is no rational argument for continuing to deprive medical marijuana to people like me who need it. It is a crime against humanity not to allow that to take place. In the galleries is Advocate Sheridan Ford, a formidable opponent. He has instruction to take us to court, challenging the constitutionality of all the laws which prohibit the use of medical marijuana and marijuana for commercial and industrial purposes. I've played with him not to, because this is the policy of the government and ought to be implemented. There does not have another TSC litigation type on the blood and tears of the suffering people of South Africa. I have published yesterday, and I will be introducing tomorrow, a bill, a simple bill, to enable doctors to make decisions with respect to terminal cases of cancer and other diseases, returning to doctors the discretion that they used to have and of which they've now been deprived of, and giving them the discretion to prescribe innovative systems such as medical marijuana, bicarbonate of sodium, or many other therapies which are available out there. That only in respect of facilities which are so authorized and are under the control of the government. It's an enormous opportunity for this country. Medical tourism is something on which we can make some real income for the country, as we can with hemp, with marijuana for commercial industrial purposes. The Chinese government is making huge investments on hemp as a fabric and as a construction material, and we need to turn the page. I admire our Minister of Health. He has got guts, backbone, and other male appurtenances which are required in his job. And yes, we need to turn the page. The pandemic of cancer does have a connection with sugar and carbohydrates. And we need to have the courage. I don't believe in a sugar tax. Prohibitionism and taxes don't work, but changing the mindset, going from prohibitionism to re-education and education at all levels, the way we eat, the way we are treated, the way we regain control of our bodies in making decisions on our treatment options. It's the threshold through which, Mr. President, I believe we can build a healthier society. You, your government, and everyone who rules the country bears the incredible burden of transforming South Africans. We talk about transforming society. That's easy. We pass law. We've made a new South Africa. We now need to make the new South Africans. And the new South Africans undoubtedly need to be better educated. But they also need to be healthier.
Honourable Member, I regret to tell you that your time has expired.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
I now invite the Honourable Minister for Public Service and Administration.
Mr. Speaker, the President, the Deputy President, honourable members, Mr. Ambrosini, I have worked with you for many years, and it hurts me to see you in the state that you're in. I had a word as you were speaking with the Minister of Health, and he indicates to me that we are very keenly following up on the discussion and research around the world on the issue of the potential of legalizing, decriminalizing medical marijuana. We're a caring society. I want to start off, Mr. President, by expressing my disappointment with the performance of the opposition parties during yesterday's debate and even today, during the President's State of the Nation address. After all the hype that the media had worked up over the weekend that the opposition is bringing out the big guns, I didn't even see a water pistol out of these people. Because none can refute the basis of what the President has asserted here on Thursday, that today is a better day than we had in 1994. Repeat it for your children forevermore. Today is a better day than we had in 1994. Don't ever forget this. This is such an irrefutable fact, and they know that. Gradually, Mr. President, as their arguments and voices became hollow, and their debate changed gradually to conceding that some gains had been made. It is now argued that the gains of President Mandela and Mbeki were reversed by President Zuma. This is as nonsensical as it is illogical, and I'll show you why. You must admit it, your own prejudice stands in the way of you admitting that the President gave a very good speech here on Thursday on a very good story. But because most of you are conditioned or preconditioned instinctively to be negative, your immediate response was negative, understandably. The combined opposition here has dishonestly and opportunistically sought to appropriate to themselves President Mandela, these people here, including, unfortunately, my own father there, former Minister Buthelezi, suddenly he's a member of the ANC, and President Mbeki. That is all that COPE stands for. They have no other vision except to cling on to President Mbeki. He was the president of the ANC. He belongs to us. They cling on to these names to give them credibility because they have no other credibility. This, I want to remind the House, is the same opposition, especially the DA here, that opposed the ANC even when President Mandela was sitting here and talking here. The same DA, in particular, that made the same scurrilous allegations about non-delivery as they do today to former President Mandela. You were unapologetically here to represent the vestiges of the past privileges, as you are now. It is a fact. It is for this reason that President Mandela then called you a Mickey Mouse party. In fact, he was being very generous. It is part of his nature. I think Mickey Mouse is a very likable and popular character, very unlike what you are. What you are is just a damn squib. No, a party of empty excuses, a party of one person with no tangible policies or ideals. It is Helen Zille, the Pied Piper, leading you nowhere, just hunting down any black face that is willing to be bought by a few pennies. the DA could not have created a greater circus than that which played itself out in the public domain over the past 3 weeks. The message you sent out was clear. We are perceived as so entrenched in the image of protection of the vestiges of white privileges that we have to have a black face. And for some reason, I thought they'd go to former Minister Likota. Last year, at this particular time, he was talking about concubines. Here was a perfect opportunity. But no, the desperation played itself out for all to see. And then Honorable Ollis comes here yesterday with what he thinks is a bombshell. And he tells us that Helen Zille is standing against President Zuma in the upcoming elections. What in the world would drive anyone to such public, self-inflicted lynching? Why would anybody do that? Advisor, it is not the way to go. But I had digressed. My aim is to tell you what we have achieved, not only in the past 20 years, since 1994, but specifically in the last 5 years under President Zuma. And you will see the president's good story is, in fact, a remarkable story. So sit back and listen. The African Union took a decision in 2003 to set up an African peer review mechanism, believing that the prosperity of any country and its stability starts with solid good government. Through the APRM, a panel of eminent experts is sent to each country under review. The review of our country is conducted by citizens of that country. The review of a country is conducted by the citizens of that country itself. In our case, shut up. In our case, the country review was done by the National General Council, comprising of civil society, religious organizations, and business sector, youth and labor.
Honourable Minister, there is a
I
point.
submit that the use of the word shut up is unparliamentary, and I'd like to ask you to rule on that, please.
Honourable Minister, that's unparliamentary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It allowed me to have a drink of water.
Order on members. Order.
I withdraw. Our first report was in 2007 and had a harsh judgment on us. Since then, we've worked very hard on issues which the panel of experts pointed out were problematic. Several months ago, after scouring the length and breadth of the country to find out how our citizens assessed us, the National General Council presented to me the final report. And I want to quote directly from their report what our people think of our government. Civil society, the business sector, labor, the youth, etc. And I quote, "South Africa is the greatest country on the continent. Nowhere else, listen, nowhere else has democracy been so embraced by its people. Overcoming our great evil, apartheid, has left our citizens better off than ever imagined. As a nation, we hold a torch to our beloved continent for what can be accomplished through the efforts of a committed government, a committed people, a committed business sector, and committed civil society sector. The people of South Africa have a way out of poverty in a land where opportunity is for all. And if that way doesn't work, then the government is there with a safety net for its people." This is not us, the ANC, speaking. It is the people speaking about us. And I continue. In this process, the report says, we are reminded of the words of Tata Nelson Mandela, giving his first speech on as a democratically elected president, when he said, and I quote, "Today, all of us do, by our presence here and by our celebrations in other parts of our country and world, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Our daily deeds as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity's belief in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a glorious life for all, unquote. The report continues, it is these words that have been a lighthouse for all of us. As a country, we are building infrastructure that links our people to other people in Africa and other areas and the world. We are establishing schools and providing education to each and every child. We are providing health care where it is needed, and we provide a social safety net for the disenfranchised through social welfare programs. We continue to provide an electoral process that is free and fair, where our people can express themselves through their vote, and a judicial system that is independent and works. Close quote. They concluded the report, Minister, we are very proud of this government and what it has done. This is not what the ANC is saying. This is what civil society is saying. This is what the people of this country are saying about our work. This is a report from civil society, business, faith-based organizations about us as a government. This wonderful story doesn't end here. Listen to what Professor Sawyer, the eminent panel member who was reviewing us, had to say about us, and I quote, "The challenges that were identified previously have been accomplished in South Africa. Therefore, in the last 20 years, remarkable progress has been made by the government. Democracy is palpable with a consolidation of public participation. The government has integrity with strong anti-corruption efforts. We congratulate South Africa for its successes. We congratulate it for its infrastructure projects. We congratulate it for spearheading good governance, for its protection of consumers, and its progress on HIV, which puts it at #1 in the world in the rollout of HIV ARVs." Close quote. This is what is said about us. And I continue. Equally notable, Professor Sawyer says, our continued efforts by government and civil society to fight xenophobia and racism and entrench the values of Ubuntu and peaceful coexistence in South African society. The steps taken to ensure accountability of public office bearers are commendable steps. I hope you're listening. Anti-corruption institutions and mechanisms continue to strengthen the fight to fight the scourge of corruption. The panel commends the many initiatives and partnerships with civil society and the private sector in fighting corruption, unquote. This is what other people say about us. It is not the ANC, it is not the government. Shut up.
All members, that's unparliamentary. Withdraw the remark.
I withdraw. However, he says, we have very serious concerns. We have very serious concerns about the huge inequalities that continue to occur in this country. End quote. The president presented us with this report in cabinet. He took it to the African Union on behalf of the people of this country. It was not us as government expressing ourselves. This came from our people, and they gave us an A+ mark. This government in the last 20 years. There could not be a more authoritative barometer of our performance than the people themselves speaking. Mr. President, through the APRM and the people of this country, we record not only a good story. What we have is an amazing story of success. Yesterday, members of my party gave concrete facts about our successes based on statistics collaborated over a period of time by reputable agencies. These ones that I'm going to give you now come from someone who doesn't necessarily like the ANC, but is forced to concede this. And this is what he says. Let's start with the economy, he says. The economy of this country is 63% bigger today than it was in 1990. Our per capita income is 27% higher today than it was in 1993. According to the World Economic Forum's Index of Global Competitiveness for the year 2012-2013, South Africa ranked 52 out of 144 countries, and we are ranked the highest and best amongst those indexes that were used there. In our auditing standards, we are #1 spot in the world. Yes. We just slipped and are now on 2. We are doing fantastic, Mr. President. On our legal rights, we are #1 in the world. On the capacity and efficiency of our corporate boards, we are #1, Mr. President. On the soundness of our banking systems, we are #2. I could go on the whole day. This is now, during President Zuma's time, now. Mr. President, you tell a good story of the last 20 years.
Order, members, order.
It is a good story, all things equal. It would be a good story if we were in Turkey or Vietnam. But in our case, it would be downright ahistorical not to indicate what the then Minister of Public Service, Dr. Zoya Skolile, said when he took over this department, and I quote, "The National Party ruled here for 50 years, producing nothing but the chaos that we find here now," unquote. We had to start from this chaotic arrangement, Mr. President. In those 20 years, we first had to establish the state and all its governance infrastructure. We had to begin from a base of a centralized government that served the interests of 3 million white people only. And we had to extend it to cover 40 million people. We had to amalgamate 11 Bantustan administrations, all tribally based, and except for 1 or 2, these were nothing more than tin pot makeshift dumping grounds to bolster the apartheid ideology. Hardly able to even run spaza shops. From these, we had to create the state. We had to reorganize this into 9 provinces. We had to designate responsibilities, create institutions and ministries, right-size the public service, and begin the process of transforming it to suit the needs of a democratic state. It took well beyond 1999 to establish what we now call public administration. Put against this background, Mr. President, you will understand that what we have achieved now is nothing short of a wonder. Yes, from that quagmire to a wonder. The resistance to the new order was evident everywhere you went in government. In that time, we repealed and replaced more than 800 pieces of legislation. In that time, we created the Constitution that we have. And instead of celebrating a milestone achievement of 20 years that we could all lay claim on, having been part of, we allow our spiteful negativity around here to take away that glow. But we in the ANC don't mind that at all. We will take the victory if you are too blind to see, because indeed the victory is ours. Within this context, let me tell you what our president here has done. As he himself has so often eloquently put it, he split the Ministry of Education from the Ministry of Higher Education from basic services, from basic education. See what the results are. They speak for themselves. He split land affairs from agriculture to allow us to pay particular attention to the very important issue of land and its redistribution. And on the other hand, to allow agriculture to ensure our food security. Again, the results speak for themselves. He created the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation. The results are clear for all to see. He created the Unit for National Planning in the presidency, and he produced our blueprint, the National Development Plan, which has emphasized the role of an efficient public service and in a developmental state. We all applauded it right here in this House. It was his initiative. All of this were his initiatives. We have begun to implement that plan. Here was a clear and incisive way of deepening democracy and creating a more efficient state. And you tell us of reversal of gains. What we see here, Mr. President, is a reversal of gains here in the Western Cape, and I'll tell you the statistics. You complain about service delivery. The president
Speaker.
conceded.
Will this minister perhaps take a question?
Honourable members, honourable members, it's not your opinion that's sought here. It's a minister. Minister, will you take a question? No, she won't take a question.
She didn't even answer.
Proceed, Minister.
Under President Zuma's presidency, we hosted the Soccer World Cup. Amid a great deal of skepticism, we pulled off a spectacular event. Even Bafana rose to the occasion then, making members on my left here the bunch of losers that Minister Sports of Recreation has assigned. The President has conceded we have a long way to go. But in the last 5 years, one of the most problematic areas has been here in the province of the Western Cape. If there is an index of failure, this is where we find it. On more than 2 occasions, she was so overwhelmed with service delivery protests that she had to go crying out to the President to ask the National Defence Force to come and intervene. No, Mr.
Yes, what point are you raising on, sir?
Speaker, if the Honourable Minister won't take a question from my Honourable colleague...
What point are you raising on?
Will the Minister take a question from me about her flying habits?
Please take your seat, sir. Proceed, Minister. Proceed, Minister.
Nowhere else has a Premier been so out of depth as this particular one to call for national intervention on 2 occasions. An index of a failed province is one that spends 10.3 billion on consultants. 10.3 billion on consultants. Why do we need a government at all in the Western Cape? We might as well let Helen Zillen run with her cronies of consultants. Why do we need a government? In fact, after all, they're paid better than the provincial executive. The Auditor General's findings on this rampant looting of public funds in the Western Cape is nothing short of scandalous. It is in fact,
Speaker,
in the
may I
delivery
just...
of
Order,
services.
members. Order. What point are you raising on, ma'am?
The Minister refers to the Auditor General's findings, and she...
What point are you raising on?
she's misleading the House because it's not under the DA
What point are
government.
you raising on, ma'am?
The
What
Minister
point?
is misleading the House regarding the Auditor General's findings.
All members, order. Order, all members. Please, order.
It is
Please
a
proceed,
fact
Minister.
that service delivery in the Western Cape is skewed towards the privileged. The delivery of government houses in this province has been the President Zuma's greatest failure in his administration. I can
Yes, sir.
authoritatively
I
speak
also rise
as
on
a
the point
Minister
of order
of
if the
Housing
Minister will sit
that
down
in
and obey the
this
rules.
province we have
sir.
dropped in our
Minister,
delivery of housing
Minister.
by
Point of order here.
25%.
You've got to sit down.
No.
Order, all members. Yes, what point are you raising on, sir?
Minister, Speaker, the Minister said that under the DA government, resources are skewed towards the rich, which is also misleading the House. 79% of our budget goes
Member, that's a
towards the
statement.
poor.
It's not
It's
rising on.
misleading the House.
Yeah, please take a seat, on the member.
On a point of order, Speaker.
Order, on members. Order.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to rise that you make a ruling because it is against the rules that you stand up and make frivolous points of orders, and that's what DA is doing and disrupting the Speaker.
Honourable members.
Mr.
Honourable members, while interjections are part of parliamentary discourse, these must not be aimed at drowning out whoever is addressing the House. We must allow the Speaker at the podium to put his or her point across. When your opportunity comes, you can respond to the issues raised. Proceed, Minister.
The delivery of housing in the Western Cape dropped by 25% since the DA took over. Statistics are there to show. Farm evictions continue with gay abandon, and squatter camps grow phenomenally everywhere, and crime escalates. This is the reality of the Western Cape that you hold out as a model. But I will tell you what we have done to improve service delivery. It now takes 7 days for anybody to get an ID document in this administration of President Jacob Zuma. It now takes 2 days for anybody to register and get a grant in this administration of Jacob Zuma.
Honourable Minister, on that happy note, your time has expired.
Agbare Speaker.
Yes, sir.
'n punt van orde. Ek het nou gewag dat die agbare minister moet klaar praat. Honourable Speaker, my point of order is I want to know whether it is parliamentary and whether it's also fair to compare the performance of Bafana to the performance of the ANC government by the minister.
Honourable members, it's okay to be frivolous from time to time, but not all the time. I now wish to invite the Honourable Freiling to the podium.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable President, in your State of the Nation address, you attempted to tell the nation a story that you believe to be good. Central to that story is the emphasis that your administration supposedly has placed on infrastructure spending. However, Mr. President, this is not the true story of the last 5 years. While we welcome the commitment to improving the state of infrastructure because our country sorely needs it, the President, in fact, has only earmarked 8% of our GDP for infrastructure development, as opposed to the 10% target set by the National Development Plan. And the story gets even worse when one considers that this government has only spent 76% of that budget. This means that not only is Zuma's ANC failing to address our 1.5 trillion rand infrastructure backlog, but they are in fact growing it. This is the real story South Africans should know. Mr. President, in your address, you also strangely lauded the Medupi and Kusile power stations as an example of the good story your government has to tell. The fact that both these projects are massively over budget by tens of billions of rands, severely delayed, and singularly responsible for our protracted energy crisis is once again neatly left out of your story. One of their reasons for their delays is that Eskom gave the 39 billion rand boiler contract to Atashi Power Africa, a company that the ANC's funding arm, Chancellor House, has a 25% stake in and continues to today. The prospect of the ANC making money out of our infrastructure build program was, I suppose, simply too good to resist, even if it means that the country has to suffer as a result. It is vital that we do not repeat these mistakes again. The South African economy simply cannot afford to pay higher electricity prices for expensive and inefficiently built power stations. It is therefore shocking that you once again announced that the government will be proceeding with the construction of 9,600 megawatt nuclear power stations, which could cost this country close to 1 trillion rand. This is despite both the NDP and the government's own updated 20-year energy plan explicitly stating that this decision must be delayed, as it is both unaffordable and unnecessary. Given the ANC's track record, one can only surmise that this steadfast commitment to a large nuclear build program is due to the potential benefit to ANC insiders. Compounding this suspicion is the fact that the ANC's own fundraising initiative, the Progressive Business Forum, undertook its first visit to Russia last year. And then immediately afterwards, the Voice of Russia brazenly announces that Russia will be getting the tender to build these 8 new reactors in South Africa. This was followed by a draft agreement that basically gave Russia veto power over anyone else wanting to build nuclear power stations in South Africa. This is infrastructure build ANC style, and it is a story that will only end badly for the people of South Africa. What is actually required is for the government to recognize its own inadequacies in building infrastructure and make it easier for other players to contribute to solving our crises. In your 2010 address, in fact, Honourable President, you stated that the Independent System and Market Operator Bill would be introduced to Parliament, which would effectively take the transmission grid away from Eskom and make it easier for independent power producers to enter the market. So what happened? In yet another sign of your government's refusal to form genuine partnerships with the private sector, you allowed your Minister of Public Enterprises to torpedo that bill in this very House in the most underhand manner. We are now back to square one with Eskom, and all its inefficiencies continue to hold our economy to ransom through its monopoly control. It is therefore clear that if we allow the ANC to write our story on infrastructure, we will continue to limp along and progressively fall behind the rest of the world in our economic competitiveness. A new book can in fact be written on the 7th of May though, but that requires the voters to tell Zuma's ANC that they are no longer happy with the sorry storyline. I thank you.
I thank the Honourable Speaker, and I wish to invite the Freedom Front Plus, the Honourable Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries.
Speaker, what is the saddest story that I've read in recent times? KwaZulu-Natal advertised 90 posts for new traffic officers. How many people do you think applied for those positions, 90 positions? 30,000 desperate South African job seekers applied for the 90 positions. The authorities decided to put them through a fitness test, subjecting the applicants to a 4-kilometer run and choosing the best ones from the results. In their efforts to get the positions, 6 applicants died, trying to be amongst the first 90. So that is how desperate South Africans are to get a job. Die agbare president spog met die hoeveelheid mense wat tans werk. Hy moet ook die syfer gee van hoeveel nie werk nie en hoeveel uit moedeloosheid opgehou het om te werk. Die ANC se werkskepingsbeleid werk nie. 14 miljoen mense het werk aan die einde van 2008 gehad. 5 jaar later, in 2013, is die syfer steeds 14 miljoen. Die syfer bly dus dieselfde, terwyl die bevolking van 48 miljoen na 51 geklim het. Werkloosheid word veral vererger deur selfsugtige vakbonde wat net na hulle self kyk en nie oor die miljoene werklooses bekommer nie. How did we end up in this situation? I do not have time to discuss the history of the alliance between the COSATU and the ANC, but this has led to the ANC labour legislation largely favouring COSATU. In Afrikaans we say, pas op vir 'n hond wat eendag omdraai en sy eienaar byt, because that's what's happening at the moment. The chickens have come home to roost. Trade unions such as AMCO and NUMSA are currently trying to destroy the ANC. What they are succeeding in doing is destroying the South African economy. According to the Director General of Labour, the number of labour days which have been lost due to strikes have increased from 2.8 million in 2011 to 3.3 million in 2012. What do we have to do to create jobs for the thousands who ran for the traffic positions at KZN? Sir, the government cannot create these jobs. The government should make it possible for the private sector to expand and create jobs. Currently, the government is interfering on every level of the economy while the trade unions are chasing away investors. You know, the vehicle manufacturer Nissan gave 4 countries the opportunity to put in a bid to manufacture the new Datsun vehicle series. South Africa was a favourite to get the bid. Thousands could have got jobs. As a result of all the strikes, South Africa did not get it. The contract was awarded to India. For the same reason, the manufacturing of the new BMW 3 Series was not awarded to South Africa. Thousands more jobs were destroyed. Lonmin decided to sink a new shaft at Marikana. It would have created 6,000 new jobs. Due to the violent strikes, the project was cancelled, 6,000 job opportunities lost. It is these events that caused 6 people to die while they ran for a position. The government must review, sir, the labour legislation and will have to ensure more distance between the ANC and the trade unions to solve this. Data from South African police shows that the country is averaging around 4 to 5 violent protests a day. Last week, the police said that Gauteng alone had experienced more than 500 protests since the beginning of 2014. In their speeches, ANC leaders proudly tell the younger generation about the struggle years, and I understand that, and the slogan in those days that was, make the country ungovernable and how they achieved success. Sir, these chickens are coming home to roost as this generation is now using the same methods against the government. The protests are about erratic water supply, electrical disconnections, poorly built houses, sewage flowing through the streets, etc. Why are there shortages? A spokesperson would normally reply, capacity constraints. Capacity constraints is in effect a code for affirmative action and cadre deployment at local government level that did not succeed. Waarom het die ANC die staatsdiens heel eerste getransformeer deur herstelende aksie? Ek sê dis die grootste fout wat die ANC die afgelope 20 jaar gemaak het. Ek sou water, krag en huise aan die armes as eerste prioriteit gesien het. Ek sou die ervare staatsamptenare, of hulle wit of bruin of swart is gebruik het om hierdie dienste op grondvlak te verskaf. Daarna kon verandering in die stasies geleidelik gebruik geword het. Vandag het die meerderheid plaaslike bestuurders geen ingenieur om die rioolwerke of die waterstelsel in stand te hou nie. So the affirmative action chickens came home to roost against the ANC in this case. Ek wil verder voorspel dat die ANC se heropening van die grondeise in die toekoms ook 'n groot risiko inhoud en teen hulle gaan draai. Daardie chickens gaan ook nog huis toe kom om te roost. Jy weet, vir meer as 4 jaar lank, tot 1998, kon mense grondeise indien. Ons het gehoop om die probleem op te los en klaar te wees nou. Ons is 16 jaar later amper klaar met die grondeise. Die saak kon afgehandel gewees het sodat boere daar buite kan sekerheid kry oor hulle grond. Hoekom sekerheid? Sodat hulle kan uitbrei en meer kos vir ons kan maak omdat die bevolking groei. Nou skielik, en ek weet nie die rede presies nie, miskien om oor die verkiesing, word grondeise weer van vooraf heropen vir 5 jaar. So what's the risk? Some 379,000 new land claims are likely to be submitted. This could cost the state about 179 billion to settle. The restitution budget is roughly only about 3 billion. How, sir, is the state going to find the money to settle all these claims? And you can see the dilemma. The problem? I say the problem is we are creating expectations with many people. False expectations maybe that cannot be fulfilled. And this is a risk, because this is the recipe for revolutions. Very soon these chickens will be coming home to roost. So we must rethink the land issue. The ANC continues to nurse the notion that they can reverse the inevitable march to an urban future. We are wasting valuable time and energy trying to restore people to their old ways. Ordinary South Africans want to go to cities and work in the modern economy. Mondli Makanya wrote, if I quote him, "It is not because black people cannot farm. It is because time has moved on from the time that the apartheid government was carrying out its forced removal policies. The money and energy that is spent," and I'm still quoting him, "on getting peasants back into subsistence farming would be better used to create a strong class of black commercial farmers who actually do farm for commercial rather than sentimental reasons," end of quote. So, we urgently need more successful black commercial farmers. The majority of the land transfers to date have failed, according to the department. We cannot afford more fertile land becoming unproductive. While the population grows on the one hand, more food is needed on the other hand on a daily basis. Hungry people running in the streets is again the recipe for instability and the fall of governments. Meneer, die ANC het in 1994 'n reënboognasie in die vooruitsig gestel, waar daar plek is vir elkeen van ons onder die son. Maar wat ervaar die mense buite en wat sê hulle vir my? Hulle sê ons het 'n zebra-nasie gekry. Dis net wit of swart. As jy 'n bruin of Asiër is jy soms 'n ere swarte. Ander kere, soos by korrektiewe dienste in die Weskaap, word daar teen jou gediskrimineer. If one applies for a job or bursary, even the freeborns must still have to fill in a form to indicate whether they are white or black. If you are white and poor, you do not get a bursary. I can give you the names of those people. Your black schoolmate with a millionaire father is given it. So when the ANC is in trouble or when they want to canvass for votes, some of the speakers very easily then blame the white people. We heard it again in this debate. So it's easy politics, but it's a recipe which divides, which incites people against each other and leads to conflict. The ANC youth, and so also Malema, many of them, were raised on an anti-white diet. Why do I say so? Because I see the chickens come home to roost. Malema is using the same methods now against the ANC. And I've read the extreme racism of black youths against whites on the internet, and I know it's come from both sides. Why does the ANC not condemn this? There are still ANC members in this assembly who preach that there's no such thing as black racism. Only whites are capable of racism. Sir, nonsense, that's not true. Die VF+ is ten gunste van 'n staatkundige bestel, waarin werklike erkenning gegee word aan die reënboog van Suid-Afrika. Soos in Spanje, in België, Switserland of Ethiopië, gebruik so 'n bestel diversiteit as die ware grondwetlike boublokke die werklikhede. Soos elders in die wêreld bewys is hierdie benadering nie in konflik met grondwetlike of liberale demokrasie nie. Inteendeel, dit word as die moderne en nuutste staatkundige diens bedryf, waardeur almal geakkommodeer voel, almal tuis voel, niemand bedreig voel en elkeen 'n plek in die son kry. Honourable President, and I must conclude, don't blame the world or the white people for our problems 20 years after 1994. It is the chickens, the ANC chickens, who have come home to roost. And if I may remember, sir, and I read the Bible also, they spoke about it yesterday, the Bible doesn't say when Jesus will be returning. It could be tomorrow, or maybe on the 7th of May. Nobody knows when. Thank you, sir.
I thank the honourable member. I now wish to invite the Honorable Mfundisi.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable President, and the Deputy President, and honorable members. It is 20 years since the advent of democracy, and we hope, as the country has just passed the adolescent stage, all that will be said and done will show a measure of growth and maturity. There are very many instances where services have improved. Applying for a passport and a new smart identity card and getting same in less than a fortnight is worth writing home about. We all know in the past that used to take eternity. We hope other government institutions will take a leaf from the Book of Home Affairs. We watch with great alarm whither bound this country if the social assistance program covering 16 million people is waived as an achievement. To what extent are we going to build a nation depending on handouts? Have we forgotten the injunction that everyone will live by the sweat of their brows? In juxtaposing the fact that unemployment figures are going through the roof, yet we give our grants as high as this, one feels that surely a middle-of-the-road course has to be found. Our concern in the UCDP is against the country developing into a welfare state. And we always look forward to a situation where those who are involved in the extended public works program earn a living, and we welcome that. But those who receive these social grants, called those who work hard, those who earn a living are called tools. This cannot be a good story at all. We totally agree with the President that common ground has to be found between mine bosses and employees. The current and continuing impasse does not bode well for the future of the country. In fact, this goes for all employers and employees, government included. Work stoppages are a drawback. The effect of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Committee has yet to be felt in a province like the Northwest. We are mindful that the bill thereon is before Parliament, yet it is in progress in other provinces as indicated in the SONA. On 12 February 2013, the President replied to the debate in the State of the Nation address, and he said, and I quote, "Honorable Mfundisi, we have noted your request for the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission to look into the cost-related road in the Northwest," unquote. It is over a year that they are looking into it, but no progress has been registered. It is worth noting that that road is a menace to motorists to the extent that a fortnight ago, members of the Provincial Portfolio Committee on Public Works were on site conducting inspection in loco when they were nearly run over by two vehicles on the same road. I shudder. This tends to remind one of one former minister of South Africa who was called Dr. Promise because he made promises that never bore fruit. It is concerning that the Northwest Province is treated more like a stepchild of this government. It is the only one without aeroplane services, yet there are two airports that are almost going to waste. One wonders what happened to the flights between Cape Town and Sun City that were, why they were stopped, let alone the services between OR Tambo and Mabatu. There is no doubt that the grade 12 results are better than in the past. However, it should be borne in mind that even as the Honorable Minister of Basic Education congratulated the class of 2013, she stated that her department did all they could to let them pass, as more failures would be hard put to coping with the new CAPS approach. Having said that, we do not take away anything from their success, but that has also proved a difficulty for higher education institutions as there are insufficient funds in the NAFSA's coffers to absorb these shock high pass rates. We share the same concerns as far as the number of females is concerned in the judiciary. Having only one female judge president in 20 years is a cause for concern. While it is sad to listen to the story regarding the 800 police killed, one feels that rather that could have been balanced with the number of civilians who died at the hands of police in order to give it a rounded and balanced story. The UCDP has never supported the notion of tenders, being allocated to individuals. We suspected from the beginning that the system would lend itself to corruption. We shall therefore wholeheartedly support the establishment of a central tender board. We in the UCDP have noted and appreciated and supported the program of social cohesion as mounted by the current administration. That leaders of all parties represented in Parliament were given opportunity to share the stage with the President and address the nation on national holidays is something worth writing home about. The fact that during the launch of the social cohesion in Kliptown in 2012, some leaders of the opposition were identified to facilitate workshops speaks volumes about the magnanimity of this current administration. The issue of social cohesion is one story this administration will be remembered for. It never happened in the past 3 administrations, and due regard has to be given to where it is needed. However, one issue that still remains as a blot in the book of the African National Congress is the failure to obliterate the use of bucket systems, even in old black townships, despite that it was said that by 2007, this would have been done away with. Otherwise, the SONA, as presented by the President, does give hope to some extent. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Speaker, and I wish to invite the Honourable Kola Barnett to the podium.
Speaker, during this speech, 25 women will be raped in our country, and before the day is over, 45 South Africans will have been murdered. This is the real story of the criminal justice system, a system in crisis. South Africans do not feel safe. We share their pain and fear because we all know how vulnerable we are and that outside these walls, South Africans have lost faith in the entire criminal justice system. The 3 pillars, policing, the Justice Department and correctional services, are deficient and plagued by corruption. The first pillar, policing, is in crisis. We read frequently of bungling at crime scenes as evidence is not collected efficiently, the contamination of crime scenes resulting in evidence being inadmissible in court, and forensic backlogs under police and health, dating years back, inevitably delaying court cases. The current controversy surrounding our police is the issue of police brutality. In 2011, the World Watch protester Andries Titane murdered by police in Vicksburg. Then came the Marikana massacre, which claimed 34 lives at police hands. 34 families were destroyed that day and still await the outcome of the commission which should determine why their loved ones died. We watched in 2013 as Mozambican Mido Macia was dragged by his tied hands behind a SAPS van to his brutal death. His young wife and little son are living on scraps today with no government restitution in sight. In January 2014 alone, we witnessed 9 deaths, allegedly at the hands of police, during the massive service delivery protests burning around our country. And when our police do act, they are increasingly acting violently. From Marikana to Vicksburg, from Zanin to Mutlahong, people are dying at the hands of our police service members. But it's not just civilians being killed. Police officers are being killed too. Much of this crisis can be attributed to the massive blunders in the management of crime intelligence, the direct result of which sees police ill-prepared to deal with large-scale protests, and because of this void, we have seen them driving blindly into dangerous situations, having to defend themselves. Because of mismanagement, there is virtually no psychological support for those officers who face death daily, and the result is an increasingly overstressed and frequently suicidal SAPS. In the face of increased police brutality, the Democratic Alliance asked the President to establish a judicial commission of inquiry. He refused. After yet more deaths, we asked again and are still awaiting his reply. Our calls to demilitarize the SAPS, as per the National Development Plan recommendation, have fallen on deaf ears. These tragedies must be laid at the door of Zuma's ANC. President Zuma, together with Police Minister Nathi Mthethwa, failed to provide adequate support or guidance to police in terms of policy, training and resources. We have police stations without water, electricity or sanitation. We have police members without firearm or driver's licenses. The President was also responsible for some extraordinarily poor appointments, such as that of Becky Cele, who was eventually fired as the National Police Commissioner, and the current National Police Commissioner, Ria Piecha, who's under investigation for defeating the ends of justice. Then came the minister's nomination of Robert McBride as the IPID head, a man plagued by numerous scandals since 1994, which rendered him utterly unfit for this crucial position. The second pillar, the Justice Department's National Prosecuting Authority, boasts of high conviction rates. However, their calculations are skewed by the large number of cases that either never make it to court or are thrown off the court roll due to a lack of evidence from the police. In 2010-11, a disturbing 55% of cases were removed from the court roll and only 11% of reported sexual offences reached the courts, of which only 6.9% actually resulted in conviction. Our criminal justice system is fundamentally failing to ensure that criminals are caught, convicted and jailed. South Africans have lost faith in the system. The lack of cohesion between the police and the NPA is massive, as is political interference. It seems that Zuma's ANC believes we simply don't notice high-profile politicians and persons connected to the ruling elite enjoying a special and therefore unequal treatment by the NPA. The NPA also needs prosecutorial independence. It is unacceptable that where high-profile people are investigated, those in charge lose their jobs. In the case of Vusi Pikoli, began investigating Jackie Selebi and Jacob Zuma. The result, he was axed. How can we try and build a competent and independent criminal justice system when the NPA themselves are involved in the delay in handing over the spy tapes to the DEA and thereby preventing a judicial review of the decision to drop 783 charges of corruption against our president? Mr. President, if you are serious about setting an example, you would use your reply to announce that you will immediately hand the spy tapes over to the Democratic Alliance. Over the past 5 years, we bore witness to Zuma's lack of urgency in dealing with corruption. 20 months it took him to appoint a head of the Special Investigating Unit. Inevitably, this dithering led to a lack of leadership and internal cohesion, and ultimately poor performance from the unit. The last pillar of the criminal justice system is our correctional services. Prisons are overcrowded, controlled by the prison gangs, and a hotbed of widespread corruption and maladministration, veritable universities of crime. The result? Rehabilitation is a pipe dream. Mr. President, your only solution to overcrowding is to simply release prisoners through presidential pardon. The result, in your most recent pardon in 2012, less than a month later, 43 people who were pardoned were back in jail for reoffending. We do see, however, how rampant corruption and maladministration works in one's favour as one's wealthy. This week, video footage emerged of 2 members of the infamous Waterkloof 4 drinking alcohol and partying in their cell at the Kgosi Mampuru prison, showing what it's really like for the rich within our jails. Rampant corruption has also resulted in preferential treatment within our prisons for those who are politically connected. Jackie Selebi and Shabir Sheikh received free medical parole to spend their final days with their families. Today they shop and golf as free men. Under Zuma's ANC, South Africans are not equal before the law. Our criminal justice system is broken, tainted by corruption and maladministration. At the SONA, President Zuma failed to reassure our nation that he can deliver, that he can keep us safe. South Africa has had enough. South Africa deserves a much better story.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform.
Chair, can I raise a point of order? I have now repeatedly heard people from the DA referring to our president as Zuma or Zuma's ANC. I find it highly offensive. I can't accept that that is parliamentary, to refer to the president of our country by his surname, when we're not even allowed to refer to each other as members by our surname. It's highly offensive, and I ask that, please, that it not happen again in the House.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think that's a very point. Honourable Minister.
Just respond on that point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Are you responding on the point of order?
I would like to make a comment, if you would allow me.
No, I won't. I won't. That's a dialogue, unnecessary dialogue, Honourable Member. Please.
Just wanted to say that...
No, don't say it. Don't say it. Sit down, Honourable Member. Honourable.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Your Excellency President, Your Excellency Deputy President, The President's SONA 2014 is a good story of 20 years of social, economic, and cultural progress. Under the astute political stewardship of 3 ANC presidents, Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, and the sitting president, Msolosi, President Jacob Zuma. It is about 20 years of continuity and change. It is a good story of continuity and change. We continue the struggle of reversing the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. We must not be deterred by screams like that one and shouts of personal attacks, ostensibly against the president, but in reality, against the African National Congress. We should continue moving South Africa forward, undeterred. That is what our people expect of us. We applaud our predecessors, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Ministers Teregana Kom, former Minister Togo Didiza, and Minister Lulu Klingwan, for laying a sound foundation in transforming the land relations landscape in the country. We continue with this work. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the Minister in the Prime Minister's office in Malaysia has the following to say, which I think is a lesson to the African National Congress, given the conduct of the honorable members to my left. He says, there can be no breakthrough without breakdown. It is true. The presidents of the African National Congress, all 3 of them that I've referred to here, have been too magnanimous. I think almost to a fault, which is why today we're sitting here with members of the opposition of the Democratic Alliance in particular, actually looking very down upon our president, the way they speak to him. Thank you, Honorable DeLange, for that, because that's the point I was going to make here. I do make it. We must change. And the president sitting here today, Honorable President, yesterday and today, the members of the Democratic Alliance say, your government has done nothing. In fact, the things that you are claiming here were done by the presidents before you. Let me tell you one small thing about the Western Cape, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Deputy President took us to Witzenberg, the Prince Albert Hamlet, about 3 years ago, on an anti-poverty campaign. When we got there, we saw the drab poverty. It looked very bad. Mr. President, I have no fear. There is an honorable member, Mrs. Lamula. She knows that. She works there. Go there now, Mr. President. We invite you to go here. They can't see it because they're focusing in the cities. That's a rural area. Here in the Western Cape, it's your government. Just go there now and see what it looks like. It is a completely different place. There is even a swimming pool and all facilities done by young people there. When we started it, after the Deputy President was there, we had 30 youngsters. When we went back, because they did phase 2, which has got now a swimming pool. If you have youngsters coming out of Witzenberg here, that could go to the Olympic Games and swimmers sometime in the future. Don't think it's a day, it's your government. Now, we invite you, Mr. President, to just go and take a walk there. If you want to swim, go into the swimming pool and swim. In Witzenberg. And Nduli. It's a Prince Albert Hamlet and Nduli, both of them. It's in the Western Cape. They can't see it. They can't see it because it's done by your government. And they don't want to acknowledge it because it's done by your government. It's the same, Honorable President. They know here in Düsseldorf, it's a revitalized township. It's beautiful. It's done by you. It's a good story. It's a good story. Here in Riebeek West, Honorable President, we can invite you there again. We invite you there. They don't know it because it's a rural area. It's not done by them. It's done by your government. There are youngsters there. We even bought them a bus because these are farm school children. They've got a bus now, beautiful bus bought by your government, to ferry kids from farm to farm to farm to school. It's your government. They are processing there. They're producing olive oil. They're doing. It's a wonderful. It's a beautiful story. It's a good story by your government here in the Western Cape. So I'm taking a different path, Comrade Blade. I'm talking about the good story in the Western Cape by the government of this president. They stand here and they say he has done nothing. They're not telling the truth. And they're doing so deliberately. If they don't know, let's call them. Let's invite them. Come with us. Let's go and see. Here. When you drive into Paarl, look on your left, there are beautiful houses. Beautiful thing, decision by their government. Here, they said 2020 houses to be built. And who is actually the main builders? The Narasek youngsters. Beautiful houses, Mr. President. Go there and see. They know it. It's here at Paarl. Beaufort West. We're actually building, we're trying to build an Olympic-sized swimming pool there. We're working. It's in progress. Here, it's your government, Mr. President. It's shocking. It's shocking. District 6 is on the go. It's moving. It's your government, Mr. President. Here, District 6 here. Just walk here. It's not them. It's your government, Mr. President. So it is not true. It is just not true. We're talking facts now. We're not shouting. We're talking facts. Mr. President, the Honorable, I had prepared a political speech earlier on, but I think given what they were saying yesterday and today, that your government, you're actually climbing on the wagon of the two previous presidents. No, it's not true. That's what I'm trying to show here. Mr. President, the Honorable Deputy Minister said a very beautiful thing here, talking about farmers, etc. Let me say this, Mr. President. There are many stories in the country. You know, there are these farms in the Free State. Bethany, Brockport, Cecilia, wait, Kromspruit. This is your first millionaire farmer in 3 years. This is your first Mr. President, you don't believe it. In the Free State, the second one is Farm Val Hope. These are your 2 millionaire farmers in the recapitalization and development program in only 3 years. In only 3 years. These are your farms. I invite my president to come and celebrate this. These farmers here, these farms that I'm talking about here, including Lower Maliki, Millispruit, those who come from Free State know them. There are 7 of them. These farms, Mr. President, are paying tax, they're paying VAT, they are registered with SARS, everything. These are some of the merging. Remember that the 1913 Natives Land Act, one of the things it did was to destroy a fledgling class of black, particularly African commercial farmers. Mr. President, these are yours. They are yours. Now we have pulled back supporting them. Let's invite them, the honorable member. Let's go together there. But Mr. President, another thing they need to do, we need to invite them. You have actually built, your administration, the first green village in the country, 56 households. In the Free State, green daylight, the streets are lit, you use solar and wind. The streets, the houses, the clinics, the schools, they are actually running a farm operation under irrigation. If you went there now, this time, it's a little bit later, but Nestle is there taking the milk from them. It's a dairy farm. They are actually almost there. Self-sustainable farm is a farm. It's yours, Mr. President. It's called Diatalawa. But next to it is Mahulukweng. You know Mahulukweng? Mahulukweng is the same. Those who come from Free State, you know it. Mahulukweng, but wait for this. You know, there's a good story, Mr. President. You know, there's a farm on the boundary between Northwest and Free State. You know, there's a place called Bloemhof. You know, the workers, the people who live in Northwest, they've been working on this farm here. across on the Free State side. There's a civil war between the two MECs. There's a farm there called Dabulamans. It's a beautiful story, Mr. President. Just go there. You will see just what this government of President Jacob Zuma has done. You are not telling the truth when you say he's just stuffing. He's stuffing on the ukwelenje ubambe staff kunansi ku President Mandela no President Thabo Mbeki. Ayikho lonto. UPresident Jacob Zuma ndibalisa yena ngoku. Ndibalisa izinto ezenziwe nguye. Azenzayo. Uyazi ndiyayazi babenilindi bazothatha ngemuyeshe no. Andithethi ngamuyeshe. Awuye Mhlonga Mvula eMpumalanga President. You know President, those are commercializing. Mhlonga Mvula eMpumalanga. Yazi eMpumalanga leya icapital ye CRDP ngumkhondo. Emkhondo just go. Bayayazi abantu. Bayayazi mabaye phaya boyibona andithethi mos ngumuyeshe andivi. Because umuyeshe uyaqhuba. Minister of Water Affairs is actually, because the story was always water. Uyabona mos is quiet now. Because the water now is there. Because the Minister of Water, Minister Mbalula just walked in there, built a stadium there. You went there, if you went there, it's a beautiful stadium. It's a good story to tell. But listen to this. You know what? Because we've got a service hub. You remember Muyeshe? There's a service hub there. That service by the state, where you have a post office, ICT, the multi-purpose center, but listen to this. He didn't talk about it, I'm surprised. Minister Mtswaledi has built a wonderful clinic. It's not a clinic, it's something between a clinic and a hospital. Because it has got accommodation for 10 nurses who will stay there. Go and see it. It's there. Muyeshe. You see, because we are transforming society. It's a good story to tell. There's nothing less than this. It's you, Mr. President. Now, if you want to go further, I'm talking about Limpopo a little bit. There's a place called Matsila. There was a young man who worked here at the chief whip's office. Where is the chief whip? The former chief whip. He went home. He's a farmer. Just go there. Every day, 8,000 eggs. It's a beautiful story. It's a good story, Mr. President. It's a good story. It's you. It's selling in the village. The villagers don't go to town and to buy eggs, to buy veg. They've got, it's actually an integrated farming experience. There are members of parliament here who visited there with me recently. They are here from the African National Congress. The ANC is under attack here. The ANC is actually moving South Africa forward. That's what the ANC is doing. And some of them, Mr. President, some of them are going to be screaming and screeching and shouting, but let's pull them along. We need them there. Honorable President, yes, kicking the screaming. Mr. President, you don't know this. There's a place called Skame in Vryheid. I'm sure the honorable members from KZN would know. You know what? Izindlu zakhona esikhame bezithe uzodaka mos, yabo? Ezikekele ezithe Mr. President. Ezikekele ezithe. Awu ngathi xa ufika pha ufika uqonda ba yu phangase kola broho yesiboro se train. Awu uqonda ba kwenzakelwa. Uyazi ungaya ngoku Mr. President. Sadibaniselana pha no provincial government. We built a new village, completely new. 904 units. Water, regulated, bulk infrastructure, everything. Mr. President, we invite you to go and see that. And we invite the honorable members on our left to go and see that. Because they're not telling the truth. The point I'm making here, I wasn't going to talk like this. Earlier on, I came here like I prepared for something else. But because they're saying the president we are staff, not one, not this one. Aka staff. Mr. President, this morning, basically portfolio committee here. The portfolio committee mosizolo bubonile so. Kuthe kwathethwa ngomhlaba yo kwanzima. Nakhumbula mosizolo. Kwanzima kwacaba ukuthi igazi ngala umhlaba. Now namhlanje besise committee gqityezelwa laa mcimbi uqalwa apha izolo. Awubethiwe no. Kukho abantu ababuza umbuzo uba hayi thina sixolanga abalapha. Ngoba imali asiyiva ibudget. Yazi ikhona i-officers zakwa-treasury. Ziyaxela uba hayi kuyaqhutywa yi-normal program ka-government, le policy ka-government. Ayiyo ye-department, it's your government. Ngoba into abangayifuniyo yile nto ithi, into zimbini abangazithandiyo. Ukuphinda kuvulwe, ukubangwa umhlaba, abayifuni loo nto. Abayifuni ke le ndawo. Ngoba abantu abanomhlaba ngabantu babo ngabavotela bona. Mr. President, abantu abafuna umhlaba ngabavotela wena. Ayingabo abavotela bona, bangabavotela wena. So, masingazibambezeli kakhulu ngabo. Masibamamele xa bethetha. Sibahloniphe ngoba singabantu benhlonipho kwa-ANC. Siyabahlonipha mos abantu kwa-ANC. Masibamamele. Kodwa masiqhube. Mr. President, ndinethemba loba le ndlu mos imajority ye-ANC ndingancama uba ayinayipasa laa bill. Laa amendment. Ndicinga uba izawupasa laa amendment. Mr. President, bathi awudilivari, bathi abantu asisavuyi nje. Yintoni le nto intle kangaka yenziwa ngumsholozi Ncamalala? Bamane ukutsho. Yabantu baxelela bona nje noba phaa phezulu kwaNcamalala eMsinga. Hayi kuhle phaa. 220 hectares under irrigation. Safaka umpambo phaa utsala amanzi beMoyi River kuyankcenkceshelwa, kuyatyiwa phaa. Into kunayo bazawuthi senzela wena ndinexhala nje. eMsinga, yazi eMsinga Mongameli. Yazi Mongameli eMsinga, ndicela uba apha ngoMatshi ukuzilungiselela ke siye eMsinga. Yazi eMsinga kukho ii-canals mos by irrigation. Sizilungisile za canals. Ngoku besiye pha eMalamala ikhona indoda ebelungisa canals, yafika phaa ithi kum, ndingulowa ulungisa za canals phaa, sizigqibile. Ndithini sizigqibile? Ithi ewe. Zuze uzozinikezela abantwini. Ndithi i-pack shed iphi? Ade sesiphakathi yakhiwe i-pack shed. Emthetha mna eMsinga ethukela fair ke ngoku. Mongameli phaa ngaphezulu. Kukho sike sapilota phaya ukuthengisa ibhokhwe. I-indigenous goat batsho bazikhumsha ezemveli. Azithengwa mos. Davenya indoda isithi yathenya indoda Mongameli, yazi inguqu enzayo awuyiqondi wena. Mamela ndikuchazele Mongameli. Yazi akayiqondi Mongameli. Mamela uthino kuyathengiswa ke phana. Kuyathengiswa Mongameli. Qanqo yazi mos inathe auction ndamnqanda ngowesibeka ndilijonga ngixesha. Qe. Yathetha laa nto mos ithengisa ibhokhwe ezimbuzanyana. Hey, ezimbuzi athenya indoda emadoda. Fanele siye kukulwa manje. Niyakwazi mos uMsinga. Yaliwe eMsinga. Athi fanele siye kukulwa manje. Hayi nansi imali. Iphinde yesibini ndimamele ndihamba phaa. Ithe yesibini Mongameli. Ithe yesibini, hey madoda. Ithe hey bafowethu, yesayithola imbuzi lange 800 rand enikwakhona. Ngoba imbuzi encane engaka eyona iyabaduru pa 1700 rands. Sakha ngoku Mongameli uzayovula ngoku i-auction ngoku sakha permanent. Lesisiza nayo temporary. eMsinga phezulu. Phakathi apho kuhlala abantu khona. Angeke baye aba bantu. Susihlupha ngabo. Ngeke baye. Bazawuya njani eMsinga? Thini Mongameli? Ndikuxelela ndithetha into enjalo Mongameli, ndithetha inyani. Uyazi eMsinga saze satsala amanzi ba kukho i-water reservoir enkulu. Sesinenhloni nokubizela phaa bona nje Mongameli. Kukho i-water reservoir enkulu phaa. Yabona ke sisebenza kamandi nomfoka sikhakhana phaa Mhlekazi omhle. Mntwana. Sisebenza nomfoka sikhakhana kakuhle ke phaa. Usebenza kahle impela. Hayi andithi makathethe.
Indoda yamadoda.
Indoda yamadoda. Shenge. Unyanisile umhlekazi, indoda yamadoda.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Focus kakhana.
Point of order.
Uyabona pha ndaya phaya. Deputy Speaker ndaya pha. Xa ndifika pha kule.
Honourable Member, there's a point of order.
God.
What's the point of order, Honourable Member?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the ANC once again appears not to have advised its visitors that they may not participate in the proceedings. They are clapping in the gallery. Could you please inform them again?
Enkosi Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, ngoku ndiya eMsinga apha kule nyanga ipheleyo. Ndiyokhangela uba kukho mos iprogram ekuthiwa i-Animal and Field Management. Le program ivala amagali, iplanta imithi, igawulayo idibhusha ilungisa kuzophinda kutyalwe kuzophinda idilishana nalento kuthiwa
Madam Deputy Speaker, I raised the point of order. I haven't had a ruling.
Yes, I'll respond to the point of order.
I didn't hear.
No. You can sit down. I heard your point of order.
Mose andithi climate change funa siplan meeting ngoku mose umsinga mkhulu ndiyafika phaya kukhona intlanganiso ndiyafika kuthiwa kuphakama kuthiwa naba kukhona abantu abazosebenza la mongameli uzayobabona mose kandithethi ngala youth isendabeni thetha ngabantu belala kodwa ndathi mabaphakama kwaphama 72 people bayaphangela and mongameli bazawuqhuba abazothatha ithuba enyanga ayo 6 months bazawuqhuba ngoba umkhulu 72 bawufuna emsinga ndihamba nomfoka Sikhakhana noNyambozi umeya we-district ngisebenza nabo basetyhala
Yes. On that point,
ANC moving South Africa forward. Yeah. ANC moving South Africa forward.
thank you, Honorable Minister.
Nkosi. Ngeke sisekela somlomo.
Honorable members, order please. Is there a point of order, Honorable Chavan?
Yes, Deputy Speaker. Can't you allow the Minister to continue? We abandon our break.
Unfortunately not. Ixesha liphelile. Members in the gallery. Bantu abase gallery ke andiyazidibize njani. Bantu abase gallery ncedani anizo members. So uvuyo lwenu malube ngaphakathi not ngaphandle. Ncedani anizo members anizo participate niqhwabe nithini. Ndiyanicela. Honorable members, business will now be suspended for 15 minutes for a comfort break. Bells will be rung to alert members to the resumption of business, and business is now suspended.
The Department of Correctional Services want to confirm that 2 persons, namely Mr. Becker and Dupree, were rearrested after they were placed on parole on Sunday, based on the footage and publication of video material that showed that they are celebrated in the Currently, we need to say that on Sunday, Rabaisa Changane hape hore di video tse hlaetseng tlamele re investigate re bone hore no yetswala
on broad-based BEE would incentivize job creation, which will truly help those that have been wronged by the injustices of the past. The rest of South Africa deserves the same. The DA loves South Africa and wants to offer solutions that can benefit all, not only politically connected elite. This is the good story of tomorrow. Releva DA re dumela gore Afrika Borwa e ka fenya ntwa ya tlala le go hloka meshomo. Re bona mananeo a nnete a mmuso a ka tlisha diphetogo ge a ka šomišwa ka tshwanelo. Re dumela gore ke nako ya gore setšhaba se fiwe maikarabelo a go tlisha dikgopolo tšeo di ka go thuša go aga ikonomi ya rena. Ge ikonomi e gola, batho ba tla hwetša mešomo, batho ba tla itirela tšeo ba di hlokago. Setšhaba se swanetše go kgetha baetapele ba bokgoni, tsebo le tsebo ya pušo. Setšhaba se kgopelwa ke DA gore ratang naga ya lena gomme le kgethe ka hlokomelo. Go kgetha mokgatlo o tee nako e telele go ka se thuše naga ya rena ka selo. Go nyakega diphetogo ke gona go tlo go tliša go bonagala ga therešo. Rena ba DA re kgopela sebaka sa gore re kgethwe gomme re kgone go sepediša pušo ye ka bokgoni. Gomme re dira boipiletšo go maAfrika Borwa ka moka gore ke nako ya dikgetho, ke kgale ba kgetha e fela ba sotlega. Jwale ke nako ya gore ba tšwe ka mogare ga go sotlega gomme ba kgone go hwetša ditirelo. Go botlhe bao e leng gore ba ko ntle ba sokola, ga ba na metsi, ga ba na motlagase, re re nako ya lena e fitlhile ya gore le ye go kgetha gomme ga le kgetha ka kwa le kgethe mmušo o moswa wa Democratic Alliance. Ke se rena jwale ka Democratic Alliance re se kgopelang go setšhaba ka moka. Setšhaba sa gabo re na le se tšhošetšwe la botswa gore ge le sa voutele mokgatlo o bušang le tlo otla ke badimo. A e gona tabe jwalo, rena ba Democratic Alliance re dumela gore modimo ga a rate go bona batho ba sotlega, batho ba sokola. Jwale re re ke nako batho ka moka ba le tlhokang mošomo, batho ka moka ba le tlhokang ditirelo gore le tšweng ka makata a namane le yeng go kgetha Democratic Alliance. ka di 7 tša May.
Thank
Re
you,
dira
Honourable
boipiletso go
Member.
lena
Your
setšhaba
time is
sa
up.
bo rena ka moka. Re re nako e fihlile
Honourable
ya gore
Member, your
di
time
lokiše
is up.
ditaba tša naga ya lena. Re a leboga.
Honourable Makubela Mashel.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, Your Excellency, the President and the Deputy President, honorable members, there are many people who stockpiled and left the country when it became inevitable that the ANC was going to win the elections in 1994. Some left the country for countries they thought promised better prospects than South Africa. Ironically, many South Africans who were abroad began their exodus back to the country. It was not unusual to meet someone who carried 2 passports and who would tell you on no uncertain terms that they would have a place to run away to should things not work out in the country. On the other hand, majority of citizens had only South Africa as their home and nowhere else to run to should things not work out. The ANC leadership knew very well that transforming South Africa was not going to be easy, given its many decades of colonial apartheid history. Nevertheless, the ANC had the courage to rise up to the challenge, despite all the roadblocks and obstacles that were presented before it. The ANC knew that providing service delivery to over 40 million people was going to be a huge challenge. Then delivery to the few privileged white people, about 5 million, which was the case in the apartheid government. It was not rocket science to understand that the ANC government was going to face a huge challenge to satisfy the needs of the majority, given the skewed infrastructure and apartheid social engineering architecture. Providing delivery to 40 million people using the same delivery infrastructure that was designed to cater for about 5 million was going to be a miracle. What the ANC government has achieved in the 20 years of its governance is remarkable, if not a miracle. The government has achieved so much under extremely difficult circumstances against many doomsayers and unpatriotic postures of those who are unhappy to see progress. Those who are sincere admit that the South Africa of today is a much better place to live in than that of pre-1994. Gender equality has become the core anchors of the ANC government's key achievements, and at the level of representation of women in public institutions since the dawn of the democratic dispensation, it bears testimony to this fact. Young women in South Africa are taking their rightful position in the public sector, academia, and to a much lesser extent in the private sector. Whilst there is every reason to celebrate these achievements, there is, however, some way to go before we can say mission accomplished. The trouble is, those who only talk about gender equality but do not do anything to accomplish this noble goal, when confronted about this, they hide behind the infamous fit-for-purpose cliché as an excuse not to empower women. The recent Employment Equity Report tells a very disappointing story on some provinces and employers who are resolute of not moving an inch in the implementation of transformation. The governing party's vision on rural development to coordinate and catalyze the implementation of the comprehensive rural development program that leads to sustainable, equitable, and vibrant rural communities is bearing fruit. One such good story is that of a young man called Colbert Mabasa from Limpopo, who through the Rural Youth Service Corps program has graduated from being an unemployed young person to being an employer. Through his brick-making business, which he started from the stipend and the skills received from this program, Mr. Mabasa's story must give hope and inspiration to his peers. Mr. Mabasa has not only looked into the brick-making business, but as we are speaking, he is working the land that he's living in to produce food for locals and supermarkets. This is a model story of rural development in action. The ANC machinery delivers. The efforts of the governing party to provide economic infrastructure in rural areas, effectively reducing spatial inequalities by 5%, providing social infrastructure in rural areas to reduce inequalities, to provide ICT infrastructure in rural areas is more than visionary. Whilst there are still challenges, as it is expected on a matter that involves land, there is every reason to be positive about the future. The legacy of economic exclusion and distorted patterns of ownership, amongst others, resulted in an unequal society where a large portion of society lives in poverty. It is for this reason that the expanded public works program was launched to attempt to intervene and address the low levels of competition for goods and services, large numbers of work seekers unable to enter the labor market, and poor skills profile. The extended public works program has served the nation very well since its inception and has served as a cushion for the rural, the poor, and the youth. There are 3.6 million job opportunities created over the past years through this program. Government has set aside the target of 6 million jobs between now and 2019. There are about 15.8 million people with jobs in the country, the highest ever in our history. Kevin Lips from Stanley calls this clearly impressive. Don't we agree with him? Another stride to the achievements by the government led by the ANC. Love or hate it, the ANC machinery implements. We in the ANC walks the talk. We have always had a plan, and our election manifesto captures our plan of action and key priorities, making South Africa a better place for its people. Together, we will move South Africa forward. The National Development Plan is hailed as the major breakthrough by many who are friends of progress. The New Growth Path has delivered on the fronts. The Industrial Policy Action Plan continues to break new grounds. The Infrastructure Development Program is perpetually changing the South African landscape for the better. I want to share a story of one foreign investor who came into the country and said, when he was on an international platform, he spoke about South Africa, and he said, South Africa is a very unsafe place. And he said, I lived in South Africa for 3 months, and in these 3 months, I did not experience any incidences that threatened my life. But I went to Mexico, and in the 3 days that I was in Mexico, I was mugged and robbed twice. The audience were very baffled by his contrasting perspective of the two countries. When they asked him, why then does he say South Africa was unsafe? He said, it's South Africans that say so. Is it possible that there are people who are better that the ANC is the government of today? Or is it possible, is it because there are people who do not want to see the country move forward? Our intentions as the ANC are clear for everyone to see. 20 years in government provides an excellent predisposition to govern and govern with results. Mr. President, we are on course. With you as the captain, we will move South Africa forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Matiwana, Honourable Members, this is the maiden speech of Honourable Matiwana. All protocols, thank you very much, all protocols from both sides apply.
Honourable Speaker, according to President Zuma, South Africa has a good story to tell about women representation in decision-making position in government and in public sector. In the limited time at my disposal, I will focus on the role of women and if meaningful women empowerment and advancement has taken place during the past 20 years. There is no argument that significant advancement of women to positions in decision-making bodies such as legislatures and here in Parliament has taken place. Similarly, the private sector has also come to the party in some respect to advance capable women to senior leadership and management positions. However, Speaker, the question needs to be asked as to whether the promotion of women to decision-making positions in the public sector has had a significant impact on the status of women in society. Do women get the respect and recognition that their opinion deserves? And if we are honest, we have to state, unfortunately, not so. Despite efforts to promote women to positions in government and in business, more needs to be done. advance women in society and to break through the artificial ceiling created by male-dominated, which has been entrenched in our communities over centuries. The right of women to participate in political life is guaranteed by several international conventions. Similarly, our Constitution guarantees equality on the basis of race, gender, disability, etc. But transforming an abstract right into a reality requires hard work from all leaders in the public and private sector to ensure that gender prejudices and cultural barriers are overcome in our communities, in particular in rural areas. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the fact that a high percentage of members of political parties are women, few women hold leadership positions. In most political parties, women are still trapped below the glass ceiling of gender prejudice. That explains why South Africa as a country is nowhere near achieving the target of 30% women in decision-making positions in the public and private sector. We cannot ignore the underlying reason for these artificial barriers for women. South Africa, like many of the countries in the developing world, remains trapped in a patriarchal society where men in political leadership positions often feel threatened by their female counterparts. If women want to influence government policy and transform our country, two major obstacles have to be overcome. Firstly, women in the public sphere need to coordinate their efforts across party political boundaries to advance policies that will meaningfully change their lives for the better. Secondly, notwithstanding the realities of the PR system, where our male counterparts will dominate leadership positions in the majority of political parties, we need to actively advance affirmation of women to leadership positions within our parties. Madam Speaker, women can only advance if they have access to quality education and to information and technology. The social grant system and other social services no doubt relieved abject poverty in some of our communities where women are heading households. But without access to quality education, women and children will remain vulnerable for generations to come. According to the South African Institute of Race Relations, the unemployment rate amongst African women aged 15 to 24 is 63%. Speaker, that cannot be a good story to tell. Government should never regard the social grant system as a permanent solution. It is simply not economically sustainable to have 15 million working South Africans compared to 16 million grant recipients.
Remember, your time
We can
has
only
expired.
attract local international investment to have skilled and workforce.
Thank you very much. I now invite the Honorable Van Wyk to the podium.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable President, Honourable Deputy President, members of the House. In 1955, the African National Congress sent out 50,000 volunteers countrywide to collect freedom demands from the people of South Africa. On the 26th of June 1955, the Freedom Charter was adopted at a Congress of the People in Kliptown by approximately 3,000 delegates, and at its core was that all shall be equal before the law. What is contained in the Freedom Charter under the heading Equality Before the Law is not there by accident. It speaks to that was wrong before 1994 with the apartheid state's criminal justice system. The apartheid police and courts were not the protectors or servants of the people. The police were considered to be the enemy. They were feared and hated and considered to be an illegitimate force. The police was enforcing unjust laws and was the tool through which the apartheid regime enforced political ideologies in direct conflict with the popular and democratic aspirations of the majority of the oppressed people in South Africa. Democracy in 1994 ushered in a redefinition of the context in which policing needed to take place. This included the transformation from a force to a service that is representative, legitimate, impartial, responsive, and accountable. It demands a service that upholds the fundamental rights of all people and that carries out its mission in consultation and cooperation and in accordance with the needs and aspirations of all South Africans. On the 27th of January 1995, the SAPS came into being through the amalgamation of the TBVC states, the Homelands, the SAPF, and the non-statutory forces. Consistent with the freedom demands of 1955, as contained in the Freedom Charter, the basic policing philosophy is based in community involvement and the Bill of Rights. Honourable Speaker, the Freedom Charter remains the platform from which the ANC operates. It grounds us, it directs us, and it is what we measure our achievements against. Crime and the fight against crime has become the knee-jerk reaction of an opposition that are bankrupt on ideas themselves, without any regard for the emotions and pain of victims of crime. They would not hesitate to divert attention from their inaptness to deal with any situation. Under the ANC government, we have made great strides over the last 20 years, but also more specifically under the current administration. Allow me to mention but a few. Since 1994, a total of 112 police stations have been constructed. Our police population improved from 1.4 to 1,000 people in 1986 to 1 to 303 in April 2014. The role of women in SAPS has been cemented, and there are now numerous women in command positions at national and provincial level and at various units. The role of detectives has been strengthened, and last year saw a massive rollout of resources to detectives throughout the country. There is no question that the ANC would now like to see higher conviction rates from that investment. For the first time under a democratic government, public-private partnerships were welcomed. As a result of that, there are some significant successes that we can report. We saw a decrease in bank robbery of 96% from 2002 to 2012. 96%. And cash in transit robbery, we saw a 65% decrease between 2006 and 2012. Where's the Honourable Kohle Barnard? These successes can be directly attributed to the partnerships that exist and the exchange of crime risk information. Honourable Speaker, the fight against corruption is a relentless fight that we need to commit ourselves to. We also need to change our collective approach to corruption. I believe that the focus is in favour of the person offering or paying a bribe. While sanctions are taken against the public officials that takes the bribe, it seems that the person paying the bribe is not receiving the same attention. We need to see consolidated and swift legal action against companies involved in bid rigging, price fixing, and corruption in past and current infrastructure build programs. Bid rigging, price fixing, and corruption robs our people from vital services, and just giving the companies a fine for that is no longer enough. Many of the companies involved admit to budget for that fine. The time has come, Mr. President, to keep the directors of such companies accountable. Infrastructure by changing the law. Infrastructure building programs are supposed to bring services closer to communities to redress the unequal distribution of these services during South Africa's apartheid past. Unscrupulous companies are preventing this from realizing. The behavior of these companies are unpatriotic and do not have the best interests of our people at heart. Money and profit should not be the only thing that they are interested in. They should take pride in South Africa's development. The interesting part of the bid rigging saga was the silence with which it was met from this side of the House. Honourable Speaker, that brings me to an important point. I believe that all of us in this House has the responsibility to protect the independence of the police, prosecutors and judges, as was said by the DA earlier today as well. It therefore raises serious questions when it then becomes known that a prosecutor is on the list of a political party and more so when one then learns that this candidate stroke prosecutor is a financial beneficiary of the same businessman whom funded the failed marriage or political BEE fronting, whatever you want to call it. Something is wrong. Whose agenda is being followed? Imagine the outcry if this prosecutor was an ANC candidate. And like the DA, the ANC will continue to pursue a security agenda that is independent and in the best interest of this country alone. They say there's none so blind than those whom do not want to see. And I believe that it's even more true in an election year. In 2010, President Zuma appointed the Anti-Corruption Task Team as an interdepartmental body to fast-track and monitor high-priority and high-profile corruption cases. Most of the serious corruption-related crime matters are dealt with in the regional specialized commercial crime courts. For 2012-13, in this administration, they received 10,941 new cases and obtained convictions against 3,968 persons in 3,763 cases with a 35,833 counts of corruption. 166 JCPS cluster employees have already successfully been convicted for corruption. And despite these facts, they will leave here, go out and say this government is doing nothing about corruption.
Order, members, order.
I also want to congratulate this administration with the establishment of a central tender adjudication and state procurement process and ensuring non-deviation from procurement standards through the agency of the Chief Procurement Officer. This will go a long way to eradicate corruption in the supply chain, and we wish the team well. This is a major step in addressing corruption in tender processes. Yesterday, the Honourable Masibuko created the impression that the ANC government does not care and does nothing to address rape and offences against women and children. The Honourable Masibuko must be careful to rely on the information that she's provided by her party's representative in that committee. Her contribution and understanding is at the best shallow and based on good media soundbites. However, what is the truth? Reducing crimes committed against women and children remains a priority of the ANC government. This sector, together with our aged, are the most vulnerable citizens of our society. In the past 3 years alone, not 20 years, 3 years alone, 1,194 life sentences were secured, with 499 alone in the 2012-2013 financial year. Since the re-establishment of the FCS units, a combined 36,225 years of imprisonment were handed down by our courts. In support of the investigation of these types of crimes, 2,139 forensic social workers were appointed. Between 2009-10 and 2012-13, this administration, crimes against children decreased by 12.4%. I repeat, crimes against children decreased by 12.4%. During the same period, crimes against women decreased by 11%. However, rape remains a concern, but it's not a government and policing responsibility alone. We must look inward and ask ourselves why our men have so little respect for women. Should we be raising our boys better? In August 2013, the Department of Justice reintroduced sexual offences courts as part of the JCPS cluster strategy to unblock increasing cases within our courts. These courts will improve the management of sexual offences cases in a manner that defends and protects the dignity of the victim. Access to our courts and the right to fair representation have improved significantly. Policing sexual offences and domestic violence remains a difficult task for the SAPS. These crimes happen behind closed doors within the confines of our homes. To fight this, we need the involvement of all of our communities. During this administration's time, under the leadership of this president, more was done in the fight against crime than can ever be imagined. we passed the following pieces of legislation: the Independent Police Investigative Directorate Act, the Civilian Secretariat Act, both in order to strengthen the oversight abilities of the two entities. We passed the Criminal Law Forensic Procedure Act dealing with DNA evidence and fingerprinting. For the first time in South Africa, we're going to be able to use DNA in tracking down criminals. We strengthened the private security industry regulating authority through a comprehensive review of the current legislation. A bill that will come before the House for debate next week and which the opposition will vote against once again. All of these pieces of legislation improving the police and justice system's ability to apprehend and convict criminals. The Minister opened a university for the police in Paarl, where future managers and leaders of the SAPS will receive training to contribute towards the professionalization of the SAPS. The best forensic science laboratory in the world was opened by the Minister in Plattekloof in Cape Town. The best in the world. For the first time in the 100-year history of the police, a criminal audit was conducted by instruction of this Minister under this administration. Convictions exposed during this audit indicates that this is something that we inherited with convictions as far back as the 1980s. SABC is now in the process to deal with this, and in future we want to see that steps are taken immediately if a police official is found guilty in a court of law. The Honourable Masibuko yesterday also said, and I did warn you, that South Africa does not have a public order policing policy. Again, this is utter rubbish, as a colleague on the police committee should have been able to tell him. Oh wait, the truth is inconvenient. The policy was presented to the committee 2 years ago in this building, 3rd floor, E306. But I guess the member was busy issuing a statement or on Twitter. I do think that something should be said about protest and public order policing. I want to echo what the President said, that the loss of lives during protests are unacceptable, but at the same time, call on protesters to protest within the confines of the law. Protest rarely starts out against the police, but as a result of the obligation to protect life and property, they end up in the middle thereof. I do not envy the police. I want to pay tribute to those police officials that put their lives on the line and face an angry crowd. These police officials are someone's mother, someone's father, brother or sister, husband and wife. And we so easily tend to forget that. We know with the increase of violent protests that the police are under huge pressure, many of them working day and night for days on end. Knowing that, I find it irresponsible, unpatriotic, desperate, and inconceivable that a political party in this House would march on another party, and the intention of the DA was never to have a peaceful march. Why rent vigilantes to be in your march if it was peaceful? Why march when you have the opportunity to debate the issues in this House? Unless it is because you are tired of losing debates. And just to deal with the myth of the Western Cape being the best-run province in the country, listen, you might learn something.
Order,
in 2011-12,
order.
In 2011-12, more murders were committed in Cape Town than Johannesburg and Pretoria combined. This becomes especially interesting when one takes in consideration that residents in low-income areas are more likely to be murdered. I'm not taking a question.
Does the Honourable Member not know that policing is a national competency and not a provincial
The problem is you guys don't know that.
Proceed, Honourable
It becomes very interesting when one takes in consideration that residents in low-income areas are more likely to be murdered. Then they want us to believe, the DA, that the divide between the rich and the poor in the Western Cape is the smallest. I think not. And to deal with the so-called clean government in the Western Cape, why did the CTICC tender land on the table of the Public Protector for irregular appointment of contractors? Jobs for pals? The DA is not as squeaky clean as they want people to believe. Sadly, in 2013, 303 police officers were attacked in the Western Cape, compared to the 77 in Gauteng, ANC-led. This should be seen in light of the fact that this was the year that the MEC of Community Safety in the Western Cape, his Premier, and the DI intensified their discrediting of the police in the Western Cape. This now is the same MEC whom have meetings and share stages with known gang bosses. It is really time to liberate the Western Cape and provide the people with an ANC government that can change their lives for the better and not focus exclusively on rich people who can stuff party coffers with money, because that's what you're doing. Honourable Speaker, Honourable President, the last day and a half, the opposition did their best to divorce the ANC of today under the leadership of President Zuma from the ANC of John Dube, Josiah Gumede, Albert Lutuli, O.R. Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, to name but a few. This lame effort speaks to the inability to understand the principle of politics of the collective versus personality politics. The policies of the ANC build one onto the other. It is not discussed in dark boardrooms or around dinner tables between politicians and dodgy businessmen with thick checkbooks. It is truly policy for the people, by the people. And try as you may, it is impossible to divorce the success of this administration from the work of the previous ANC administrations, as it will be impossible to divorce the success of the next administration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Candidates and select their own leader as their second choice president candidate. ANC leadership, policy and programs are determined through open democratic processes and participation of its members from the inside, not the outside in. Honourable Speaker, Honourable President, it was amusing to listen to the opposition telling us how much better previous administrations were compared to yours, how short their memories are. It is only the faces and names that differ, but throughout the 20 years of democracy, the the Democratic Alliance never had anything good to say about any serving president. Who can forget Tony Leon criticizing President Mandela or his strained relationship with President Mbeki? Even the noise around presidential residence is not new. I remember the then chief whip of the DA with the media at his side trying to climb the walls of the then President Mbeki's house because they believed the house was built with state funds. Honourable President, Honourable Masibuka threatens to impeach you. But when the public protector made an adverse finding against Helen Zille, they called a press conference and attacked the public protector. Much as they are now doing with the AG's report on the DA's use of consultants. Honourable Speaker, Honourable President, Honourable Deputy President, we indeed have a good story to tell. And what a difference it will make if those sitting on this side of the House can do so as well. Life in South Africa is better in 2014 than it was before 1994. And I'm so pleased that the opposition admit to this so readily. The ANC government is responsible for this better life. Despite opposition having all the evidence in the world that South Africa is a better place now than it was in 1994, they still would want an outside confirmation. Well, Honourable Speaker, at the polling station on the 7th of May, the voters of South Africa will give them that confirmation. When they resoundingly will vote the ANC into power again, they know, the voters, that the task is not complete and that more needs to be done. But they also know that life in 2019 will undoubtedly be better than it is today.
I thank the honourable member. I now wish to invite the Honourable S.A. Mpeti to the podium.